What's up, everybody, and welcome in to another edition of the Sit Down. As always, if you enjoy this video, please make sure you hit that like button and let me know what you think of today's very interesting interview in the comment section below. If you're new around here, you just haven't done it yet, or living under a rock and seeing this video for the first time, I don't know what you're waiting for. Hit that subscribe button below now so you never miss another Sit Down video. What's up, everybody, and welcome in. This is episode 149. I am your host, Jeff Nadu. I also want to remind you, if you enjoy cigars and you want to support the show, cigar season will be here on your patio or on that walk with your wife or girlfriend. Go and get a cigar. Provide a Cigar Club. Get our own sit-down cigar right now. The link to buy is in the description of this video. Today, we're going to get into another one of our very interesting interviews. And on this show over the years, I've looked to the prison world to find interesting people that have interesting stories and have found their way into federal prison and hobnobbed with mobsters. Today's person we're going to speak to has done all of that and more. And I have to say, I've talked to a lot of people over the years. I spent a few hours on the phone with him the other night, and I have to say, he is a super interesting guy. He comes from the great state of Maryland. And as they said in the great film Wedding Crashers, crab cakes and football, that's what Maryland does. However, as we also know, they put out the show The Wire. And Baltimore is, to me, a very interesting city. Today's subject is from that area. I want to hear about his story, and we welcome him now. His name is Eric Foss. Eric, welcome in. As I said, really enjoyed talking to you the other night. I think you present a really interesting life, a really interesting story, and now you're on the straight and narrow. How you doing?
I'm doing great. How are you today, Jeff?
Doing well, doing well. This is I think for you something new. This is your first time really speaking to anybody, right?
Yeah, this is definitely my first time.
You got in touch with me. We had the conversation. You told me that you were in all sorts of different places. Obviously, I always like to look into people's stories, and we found not one, but you've actually spent two different times in federal prison. One of them was in the early 2000s, which we'll get into, and one was recently. You got out just several years ago, and both of your cases had to do with the drug trade, which we'll get into. But this is our first time speaking to you, so I want to start at the beginning. You were born in 1976. You are from Baltimore, and you're not from Middle River or Bel Air or Dundalk. You lived in Baltimore City. You're from the rough and tumble East Baltimore. What was it like? Because look, obviously we can see you are not a Black American. You're not African American as far as we know. You're a white guy. What was your childhood like? What was your family like?
Well, basically, my family, my grandparents, they were really good people, but then like the rest of the family basically fell off, if you understand what I'm saying. So my neighborhood growing up, it was actually, I'm from Northeast Baltimore. My neighborhood growing up in the 80s, the early 80s, and coming up all the way up till 90, was actually an Italian neighborhood. Okay, there was a lot. I'm not Italian, but there was a lot of Italians in the neighborhood. So then around late 80s, early 90s, it started integrating and everything like that. So then, my neighborhood was always like, it was a cool, chill spot. You know what I mean? Everybody got along. There was never no like, no like racial things, nothing like that, but, when you come up and then you start getting into, as you're growing up, basically I was raised by my grandparents because my father was in prison. The first time when I met my father, I was 9 years old. He escaped from prison, and I met him. He got me high, and he just started telling me, all kind of the wrong stuff. So
what was he in prison for?
He was an armed robber. That's what he did. He did a lot of armed robberies, and he was a junkie. You know what I mean? He did heroin, stuff like that. So he was never around. But then when I did meet him, within a year he went back to prison and he died of pancreatic cancer. So that's basically all I knew of him.
When you say he got you high, real quick, like on like marijuana or
marijuana. I was yeah, I was only 9 years
I
old.
was gonna say, wow. Okay.
Yeah, no, nothing crazy. But so just a normal childhood, going to school, everything like that. And then when you start hitting your teenage years, I started dibbling and dabbling around, just getting locked up, doing stupid stuff, because when you're growing up then, it was a different era. It was like there was no social media. Kids didn't want to be around parents, stuff like that. I didn't have parents, so you got my grandparents can't control me. My house is a flop house. I never even had a bed, honestly, let alone a bedroom. I bought my first bed in my life. So I started getting locked up at a young age, So I started out in like juvenile places, stuff like that, and started messing around, selling coke. When I got into selling coke, I did pretty good. You know what I mean? I did pretty good, but you go up and down. You know what I mean? But the thing is when you're 15 years old and you got more money than anybody in your family, nobody can really tell you nothing. And the house that I grew up in, like I said, my grandparents were good people, but you got to worry about an uncle coming, stealing whatever money you got stashed. Because we used to have, me and a couple of my friends, we used to have to hustle to go to school, to have some Jordan, stuff like that. We used to rob baseball card shows, things like that, So there was a lot, basically, that was basically my upbringing. I got thrown out of school when I was in 9th grade. So,
and that's around the early 90s, right? So you're having to grow up a lot quicker than maybe most people do. You don't have necessarily a father figure there saying, hey, don't do this, don't do that. Your grandparents do the best they can, but grandparents, okay, whatever. You kind of do what you want to do. You're not obviously in, you're in the city, right? There's a lot of other kids with the same circumstances as you. And let me ask you, like in the early 90s, on a weekly basis, what are you making selling cocaine?
Early 90s, you figure that's when I was in my teens. So we call it Ready Rock, but it was basic crack, what they call crack or whatever, cooked up coke. Mm-hmm. So we would do that. And we had a lot of strippers on Baltimore Street. It was like, it's downtown. It's called the Baltimore Block. And it used to be huge with a bunch of clubs, and they shut down half of them. So now it's private.
It actually was big when the mafia was in Baltimore. It was very mob-owned. Jewish and Italians ran that. I know the area, sure, the block, absolutely. Yeah.
So basically, what we would do, we had a lot of strippers and stuff like that. That we would give them like on good nights, we give them G packs, which would be $1,000 worth of Ready Rock, crack, whatever you want to call it. And they would give us 600 back, keep 400, you know what I mean? And we had probably like 15 strippers. Like a good night down there, say on Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, we would profit probably $20,000 a night, you know what I mean? And I mean, we're teenagers, you know what I'm saying? So that's just down there. But my main thing was where I really got into it was because I was a younger white kid, and Baltimore's basically a black city. Okay, so it was a lot of just drug strips and stuff like that with the black people. I could get into the white bars. Like, even though I'm underage, I know all the white people who come there, the iron workers who cash their checks, you know what I mean? A whole different crowd. So I was able to like middleman that. And then that's how I started working my way up. And then I wound up going to state prison when I was 22 for a cocaine conspiracy. Basically, after I get out on that, I'm home about 8 months. Now, when I came home, I still had probably close to 200 grand. Okay. I did the 4 years in state prison. I got sentenced to 6. I did 4 of it. I still had like 200 grand when I came home. So first thing I do, I'm buying cars, shit like that. I'm kind of like showing off. I'm really not doing nothing. I'm not selling no drugs at the time. And I wound up getting under investigation because a friend of mine, he's still a friend to this day. He's a really good dude. He's selling coke. Now he's selling coke to a guy who winds up getting busted. Now this guy's turns into an informant. Okay. Now what he does is, now they're dealing in smaller shit. They're dealing like quarter ounces, half ounces, stuff like that. Him and the guy who winds up getting caught. So it's really nothing. So the guy who winds up getting caught becomes an informant. Now he brings another guy with him on this one occasion to meet my friend at a strip club. Now listen to this bad luck or karma, whatever the fuck you want to call it. So The informant gets up to go take a piss while they're at the strip club. My buddy, trying to steal a customer, goes up to the cop and hands him his number and basically cuts the informant out, not knowing this is a cop. Says, hey, man, you really want to get better shit, better price shit, just deal straight with me. Next thing you know, this guy, that might have been a deal for a quarter ounce. Next thing you know, this guy's calling for eighth of keys, quarter keys. That's too fast, way too fast. My friend should have caught on to it, but he was younger too. Everybody's greedy. So now that's when I did get back into it a little bit. I'll go grab myself like a key. You know what I mean? So I'm sitting there, I get back into it. But by the time I rolled back into it, I was already under investigation before I'd even done anything. Just because I'm coming around into Escalades and shit like that from my old money. And I just got out of prison. So it looked like, you know what I mean? And there was another guy with my same name that my buddy used to buy stuff off of. He had the same first name as me, and so the name Eric. Now the police are watching. They're seeing me pulling up with jewelry on, because I used to be like
they figure you're Eric.
Yeah, exactly. So, but then I did get back in. So then I did get back into it, and I mean, just from that little deal that he did and doing that investigation went all the way to Las Vegas. There was a guy, he wound up committing suicide in the whole deal. The feds thought he was a big drug dealer, but he was just a big drug addict, but he was rich. His parents left him like a company called Debtscape. It was like an Ameridebt type deal, so like a knockoff of Ameridebt, but Christ, a knockoff of Ameridebt is you're still loaded. You know what I mean? So he's got that. So this guy's a multimillionaire, like 34 years old, 33 years old. He's running around. He basically pays my buddy $60,000 a year just to drive him around, wake him up to take him to the office and drive him around and get him drugs. So the feds wound up thinking at one point in time, because this guy, he would just like go into car dealerships every time the new Benz would come out, Ferraris, whatever, he'd throw cash out there. You know what I mean? Always with strippers, everything like that. He's a millionaire, a real legitimate multi-millionaire. But they think that because of his lifestyle, they thought that he was a drug dealer. So he wound up getting hemmed up in this. When they wound up raiding, I believe that time they raided about 30 houses in one night, including my old family home in the city. Now, at the time, I'm living close to York, PA. Okay. I got a place up there.
For me. Yeah.
Right. So now my little brother, which I had two brothers, they're both dead. Both of them passed away. They were younger than me. So my little brother was alive at the time. So he's calling me and he's like, hey, Eric, they're raiding the house in the neighborhood. So I happened to be in Baltimore City at the time. I said, what? So I think it's the state police. You know what I mean? So I know nothing's in that house. I don't live at that house. None of that shit. I said, man, motherfuckers. So I went around there. To cuss them out, whatever. I was young and cocky. So I get there. They handcuffed me and everything. I know there's nothing there. They wind up taking my Escalade. So as they're walking out the door, they actually unhandcuffed me because I'm not indicted yet. So I don't know what's going on. So I'm cussing and arguing. I really don't get along with them. I don't get along with police. If you look at my jail record, I got a lot of stuff I actually got assault on staff. But anyway, long story short on that, at the end of the day, I'm cussing them out. Like, don't worry, I'll get my truck back and whatever. This white guy, he looked like the guy off Law and Order. He turned around and he pulled out this damn badge. And he said, yeah. He's like, Eric, he's like, you don't even realize what you're into. We'll be back. And he tucked it in. I'm like, well, who's this guy? Walker, Texas Ranger or something?
You thought it was some local police or something.
Well, I go the next day. To my lawyer's office because I want my truck back. So he's like, well, what happened? I was like, Gary, I really don't know what happened. So I hand him all the paperwork. So he looks, he's like, oh man, this looks like this could be federal or whatever. He's like, so he makes a call. Now I'm sitting there and I got my little brother's friend with me. So I hear the conversation, right? So, you know how you can tell what a conversation is, but you know what I mean? So he takes about 10 minutes, whoever he's speaking to, and he hangs up. He's like, yeah, Eric. He's like, look, I'm just going to tell you, this is a wiretap investigation. He's like, they didn't tell me that. They can't disclose that because the indictment's still sealed. He's like, you're not indicted yet. And you could get your truck back. So I'm like, I could get my truck back. All right. I said, well, what's up? He's like, but listen, they will want you to talk to. I said, what do you mean? He's like, you want him to walk out of the room? I was like, no, you can sit in the room. I was like, so what are you saying? You want me to be a rat or something like that? He's like, well, and he said something about it's before you're indicted or something. Like, I said, look, Gary, I said, I'm never going to fucking do that, you know? And I was like, so, and I was like, and I had a 7 Series BMW anyway. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So I was like, whatever. And he's like, and I was like, and besides, Gary, I said, why are you wishing bad luck on me? I'm not even indicted. He's like, Eric, it's a whole new ball game. They're going to get you. So I'm like, all right, whatever. So like 2 weeks, probably 2 weeks, I get this knock on the door. You know, a nice knock, wasn't knocking my door down, nothing like that. I look out. He's like, oh, Eric, United States Marshals, come on out. You're indicted. So I'm like, whoa. I say, hold up. He's like, Eric, don't try to run or nothing. He's like, don't what? I look, basically, I could have flushed a body down the toilet. They didn't care because they already had enough evidence. This is how these people operate. They don't care. So I open the door, whatever. Now they're driving me down. They drive me down to the, where you get booked or whatever, federal building or whatever. So when they drive me down there, they're like, hey, you got anything you want to tell us or whatever like that? I'm like, nah, I don't want to tell you nothing. So then they laughed at me and they're like, don't worry, others will, which they're actually right. You know what I mean? So going into that, that's when I first entered the federal system. So I'm figuring, go for a bail review, get a bail, all this kind of stuff. And, I was used to the state where, like, I don't know how all states work, but like down here in Maryland, like a second degree assault carries 10 years. But if you really second degree assaulted somebody, you go to court, you get probation for 6 months. You understand what I'm saying? So
yeah, it's way different, right?
Right. So these sentences are actually real. These are real football numbers they're throwing at people, So when the indictment comes down and it gets unsealed, I'm indicted for the statute was, they go by statutes in the feds. The statute was over 5 kilos of cocaine. Okay. And to get your guideline level, that's just your statute, which means it's a 10-year mandatory minimum and a maximum life sentence. You cannot get below 10 years unless you cooperate. So that's with the over 5 kilos. Then they put my kilo level at, back then it was 2 points higher. So I think I wound up being almost like a level 36 because they put on me 50 to 150 kilos. So I'm like, nah, come on. And now I've seen some bricks, dude. But I've never 150 kilos, 50 kilos. Come on, man. And you didn't catch me with nothing. So I wound up sitting there about in pre-trial. I wouldn't cop out. I'm hell bent on going to trial. My lawyer's telling me I'm a nut. He's like, you're not going to win. You know what I mean? He's like, you're not going to win. They write the rules, which is the truth. They do write the rules. So, but I'm like, I can't force myself to cop out to all this crazy stuff when they don't. So anyway, we wind up going, we were going to have an evidentiary hearing on the drug amount. Okay. And this is where I learned a little bit. They were using something called preponderance of the evidence, which means nothing. Like preponderance of the evidence is when me and you hang up this call, we just sold 10 kilos by preponderance of the evidence. But beyond a reasonable doubt, obviously we didn't. You know what I mean?
So they didn't, to just kind of rein this in, they didn't catch you with 50, 100. They didn't catch you with any drugs. It was the thought of you were on a phone call or surveillance or whatever, and they believed you were conspiring to sell. And that's what the government gets you on. A lot of the time, they don't run up in your house and find, 800 kilos. There'll be times where they would do that, but a lot of the time it's just their investigation, them following you, they put it all together and you speak in code, you do all that sort of thing. And they put it all together and they call it conspiracy.
Exactly. Conspiracy. So basically, the only drugs they did find in this whole thing at the whole conspiracy was my buddy wound up selling, I think it totaled up to 1.5 kilos or maybe 2 kilos to the police, all like 9 ounces at a time, 4.5 at a time. You understand what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. So basically that's what I got convicted of, because at the evidentiary hearing, we were going to have it. They had like 4 witnesses going to come in against me, but the witnesses were going to just testified to a conspiracy, because these people, I didn't even know these people. These people don't know me. I don't know them. I only know a couple of the people. You know what I'm saying? And my one buddy, the original buddy that I told you about, that did the small deal and cut the throat and it all started off, he's still my friend to this day. And here's a big reason why. This guy, you would never, if you said he had never been arrested before, none of that, man. He's not a street guy. You know what I mean? He's just, you would figure this guy would sit here, all these big gangsters and all who flipped. You figure this guy would flip, right? They offered him, if he would have just came into court at an evidentiary hearing and said that he seen me in a certain time frame with over 5 bricks, which he did. You know what I'm saying? He definitely seen with that. If he would have came in there, he would have never went to prison. He would have stayed on pre-trial for however long or whatever, supervised release or whatever. He told him to kiss his ass. So he gets a hold. I'm locked up. He's on the street because he had a record or nothing. So he gets a hold of one of my homeboys. He's like, hey, tell Eric to call me. So I call him. I'm in jail. And he's like, and I was getting ready, I'm fighting these people about this drug amount. This is a big deal, because this is how they get you in them mandatory minimums and statutes and stuff. So I said, hey man, I said, he's like, Eric, he's like, they pulled me in today. They tried to get me to do this, that. I was like, well, what did you tell him? He's like, I told him no. And I feel bad about this to this day, Jeff. I said, man, are you sure you told him no? He said, he cussed me out. He said, if you don't believe me, he's like, have somebody in court Tuesday because I'm going to prison. They sent him to prison for 8 years. So this guy didn't have to do a day, and he went and did 8 years.
He stood up for you. And that's the one thing you have to also worry about. You have to worry about all the other people, right? That are involved, maybe that you don't know about. There's other people in your indictment. So let me ask you, you're facing you're a young guy, right? You're in your, late 20s, early 30s. This is what, around early 2000s?
When I caught that, I was 26.
Right. And in 2005, after everything, they essentially hit you for more than 50 kilos, right?
No. That's a newspaper. Like when the newspaper comes out, that's just it'll be some lady in the court.
Like the press release, right?
Right, the press release. Like they say 50 kilos. I was convicted. The conspiracy was 50 kilos, 150. I was convicted of 1.5 kilos. Nowadays, honestly, they charge it different. When I caught my new conspiracy, they charge it different. They actually put the drug amounts in each person's thing. And I think I have a lot to do with that because of the way that I fought them that time, honestly, because they were just putting ghost drugs on everybody. And
now, either way, you still get, you get 145 months, which in layman's terms, that's just south of 15 years.
Mm-hmm.
I'll ask you, when the judge sentences you to that, because as a lot of people don't know that the judge is the end of the line. He can give you 2 years, he can give you 30 years, right? A lot of the time they'll take the recommendation, but it's their decision. He hit you at 15 years. What's your immediate thought in your head? You're a young man.
Here's the thing. It's not 15. It's 145. It's 12 years, 1 month. That's 12 years, 1 month.
Is it?
Yeah, 145
is 120. Okay. Yeah, either way, it's more than 10 years. Yeah. Okay.
Okay. So basically, here was the argument because the Booker law passed. So that's when it did give the judge more leniency to set the guidelines became advisory. The only thing mandatory is your mandatory minimums. Now, I told you I actually beat the drug amount. So now my mandatory minimum is only 5 years. But we're not going to go into the courtroom and disrespect the courtroom and ask for 5 years. Right. We're going in and asking for 8 years. So I'm in front of the chief judge. Prosecution is believing like I'm worse than what I am or something like that. And they're screaming at least 16 years. So now we're asking for 8, they're asking for 16. The judge, he was the chief judge. Booker had just passed where as long as the judge deems the sentence fair, which could actually help you or hurt you because you really can't appeal it because he's saying it on record how he deems the sentence fair. And I didn't win or lose because he met in the middle. Now, had it have been, and I got to 12 years, whatever, had it been under the old rules when guidelines were mandatory, I would have gotten like the 8 years. So actually the law actually screwed me in a way. You know what I mean?
Either way, you get a good amount of time. You're going to spend, math wise, nearly 10 years of your life in a box. But, that was the decision, you made. You didn't cooperate. You said, you know what, I did what I did. How much money do you have in your possession? Did they see how much they seized from you? Do you know?
I mean, you talk about that time, they seized like money out of houses that they raided, like small stuff like here, like 10,000 here, 4,000 here. That time they seized my Escalade. But I mean, there's been several times. I mean, they've seized money from me. They've taken money. They've robbed me for money, to be honest with you. I've been pulled over by the police down here. This corruption with these police been going on forever. This isn't just the drug trace task force. You know what I mean? They or the gun trade or whatever it was.
Yeah.
That down here, you've had cops like I got pulled over coming back from the Inner Harbor one time. They took $7,000. And they just take it. I mean, but like, so there wasn't a lot of cash taken from me on that. Right.
Did you think to yourself though, like, I'll be okay. I mean, I'm young, I got a little money, like I'll go in. You'd already been to prison, but you'd never been to federal prison, right? So this is kind of a new thing. So you get your time. You also get several years of supervised release after the fact. So when you're done, you still got to you still got to maintain a certain style of living. You still got to do certain things. They're watching you still. But let's talk about you going to prison for the first time. Are you immediately remanded?
Excuse me? Yeah, I was already locked up, so I was never released. That's why, like, when you see 2005, and then when I got released, like how you said, I did 9 years or whatever. I did 10 years, 10 months altogether on that sentence, because I was never, I never made bail. They didn't release me. You know what I mean? Usually the only people they release, like on a box, which you got to pay attention to too. The feds usually only release people on a box that it's their first ever offense, or if they're cooperating, then they'll release them on a box. And that's how the feds work, not saying everybody on the box is cooperating if they're not a first time offender. I don't want to do that. You know what I mean? But that's usually what it is, at least down here where I'm from. But I started at FCI Gilmer, and an FCI, what that is that's a medium security facility. Okay. So just how you had just said, okay, this difference is in prison. Now, when I went there, it's a medium security. So you do have guys like me, a lot more of younger guys who still have a couple dollars, maybe if it's only 20 grand, 10 grand, whatever, that are fresh coming in, rather than the penitentiaries, which has the guys who've been down 20, 30, they've been forgotten. It's hard. It's less money there. So I walk in this FCI back in 2005. That's by the time I got there to Gilmer, and it's wide open. I mean, it's a party. I like action. You know what I mean, Jeff? I like action. I'm not going to say that I was one of them. I didn't go in there and say, oh, I'm going to sit here and do this and do that. And I went in there. I said, man, I'm locked up. See, that's the difference. Like when I see like one of these channels, like you got guys like they think I'm nuts for that, like going in there and getting in the mix. And you know what I mean? Just the action. And it leads to trouble. It does. But like I see these other guys, they kill people in the street and they come into jail and they won't steal a tomato. I mean, like that don't even make sense. You already got life, you know what I mean? But so when you get there, it's totally different from the state. Whereas though it's so many cars, gangs, cliques, it's the feds is going to always, on all levels even, is going to be racially segregated. I'm not used to that. Right,
because where you're from, it's you don't see race. You just run with whoever.
Right. When I grew up there, a guy my age, listen, if any guys are my age, I'll be 50 in a couple years. Okay. And any guys my age who are from where I'm from, and they're saying they're gang. We didn't have gangs. No, you're not. Now I can't speak for these younger guys who's born into this generation. You know what I mean? So we didn't have that. We had neighborhoods, we had cliques, we scrap, we throw our hands, whatever. But little gunplay, stuff like that, little crews, you know what I'm saying? But never gangs or nothing like that. So now this is like eye-opening, like when I get into this, because I'm like, man, what the hell? But like I said, there's money on the yard. The yard's wide open. I like getting in the mix. So I get into then you get to meeting certain people, like I'll tell you, and then you get some of these people like when I got there at Gilmer, we had the guy Steve Warshak. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. He started you remember the fat heads that they put on the wall and all that
Yeah.
stuff? Okay, he started that and he sold it. And then he turned around and then he did like them boner pills or whatever, the anxiety.
Really? I never knew that.
Well, look, so he switches off and does the boner pills or whatever. And obviously they don't work or add whatever. So when people would sign up to get like one bottle or whatever for that month, $60, whatever, he kept hitting their credit cards and all this stuff for like,
Yeah. So
look, they offer this guy, the feds come to him, he steals millions. And this is how crazy some people are and how greed actually gets people. They come to him, and I guess he had to forfeit all his money basically, but which he's not understanding, they're going to take it anyway. So they offer him 4 years. He says no, and he goes to trial. Wow. They smoke him. They gave him 25 years. I remember we're sitting around. I like to drink, so I'd get drunk in there. So I'm sitting there. We're in the cell. I'm drinking. He's not. A couple other people are drinking. So I'm sitting there, and I'm like, so I asked him a question. And some of these guys, they think they're better than people because of their crimes and stuff like that. Like a fraud guy, I think a drug dealer is a scumbag. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But you're stealing money from an old lady. You know what I mean? So, but at the end of the day, none of us are the greatest people. So I asked him. I said, man, Steve. I said, let me ask you a question. Why didn't you take the 4 years? This guy looked at me, Jeff. He said, I could never look my children in the face and tell them I'm a criminal. I said, yeah. So it's like a shot at all of us. I said, you know what, man? I said, you know what you do now? I said, you can look your grandchildren in the face and tell them you're an idiot. You know what I mean?
How long did you say you got?
He got 25 years.
Yeah, that's insane. What a wild way to think.
It's greed. I'm not going to say greed, but people just get this impression. It's the United States government. They're going to do what they want to you. You know what I'm saying? But like the prison, like there at Gilmer, like you would meet people like that, and then you'd have the fake people. You got these guys claiming to be this, these guys claiming to be that. You got your Italians, you got your bikers, you got every gang you could think of. So I'm having my way there. Like
what kind of Italians did you meet there? Did you meet anybody there in Gilmer?
Well, yeah, I've met at Gilmer. Who was there? The one guy. Remember the guy Kevin that he got his wife pregnant from jail or whatever, from Fort Dix or whatever. Had the cops smuggle out his whatever. You never heard of that? Some
mob guy?
Yeah, his name's Kevin, I think. Whatchamacallit, Jimmy Gallo was there. Norman was there. Norman Dupont, his aunt with the red.
Really?
You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, absolutely. Let me ask you about Norman. Did you have any interaction with Norman?
100%. Norman's a great guy.
What was he like? Because he's a really interesting guy, right? He, was half Italian, was the caretaker at the Ravenite Social Club, he's around John Sr. every day, commits a murder. Got life. What was he like?
He was cool. I mean, look, when I was there, like he's a lot older than me. And, but he was high spirits when I was there. He wound up getting sick though. He did get sick, but he got better. Then something happened. I think one of his children passed away or something.
His son died. Yeah.
Okay, yeah, that's what it was. And we actually hooked back up. Like I wound up back with him at Schuylkill years down the road after I got thrown out of Gilmer, went to the penitentiary and all. Mm-hmm. But Norman was a cool dude. He play handball, tough guy. Play handball, play softball. I mean, all the sports. Talks to everybody. Not on his high horse like some. He wasn't one of the gossip girls. Let me say that.
Did he?
He's a good guy.
Did he get respect in there? Did you ever ask him about John Gotti or anything?
No. Nobody
Never
really
talked about it.
I mean, it's really honestly all the stuff like people read like in there, like the 5 families or something like that. I remember one time somebody made a comment, right? Mm-hmm. Oh, look, Norman was ready to beat somebody up in the yard. That's what it was. Some guy kept on coming up and harassing them. Some weird white guy. I mean. And like I said, the yard's wide open. So like things can happen. You know what I mean? So Jimmy, Norman, and all of them are sitting there. So all of a sudden, they give him try to chase him. The Italians, get away, whatever. So next thing you know, the guy comes back over. He says something. Norman hopped up, man, flew over the table, man. The guy hauled ass. So Norman didn't get him. The guy actually ran. So somebody said like this, so we're sitting back because I got a blackjack table. And, we're a younger crowd. We're sitting back, we're drinking, smoking weed and shit. And somebody's like, oh, look at that. He's about to fuck him up. So I was like, yeah. And they said something that I this doesn't mean no disrespect or nothing like that, but it's just like everybody's drinking. He's like, yeah. And because in the book, the thing, they said he was the Raven Knight. He was the gopher at the Raven Knight. So somebody said like this, somebody said, yeah, the gopher's about to get him. I said, yeah. I said, but you remember one thing. That's John Gotti's gopher. You know what I mean? That's not just
that's what someone. So I was talking to some, because I've written Norman Dupont. I've tried to get in contact with him, and someone recently said to me, they go, he had to get a lot of respect to be in that place, right? In that Raven Knight. You don't just hang out there for no reason. Like, that's what a lot of people don't realize. And, people want to call him a coffee boy or this or that, but
no.
He was, as you said, he was John Gotti's coffee boy, or
right. And he's not. They say, how people word things. It's not. Come on.
He's at federal prison. He's not there for selling coffee.
Exactly.
So what kind of things were you getting into at Gilmer? Were you working? Like what
no.
Were you doing any? Do you have any?
Well, basically, I got into gambling. I would have blackjack tables, poker tables, and obviously drugs. You know what I mean? I get dope. I get dope, and mainly weed. I was selling at Gilmer. Got some, well, when I could get my hands on a dope, I had never brought dope in myself though. So eventually down the road, I did it at another place, and I almost died doing that. I'll tell you.
Let me ask you. I have to interject. Didn't you feel like, look, I've sold drugs, and like this has put me in a really bad predicament. Maybe I should not do that anymore. Did you ever think like that?
No. And to be honest with you, because I was in prison, this wasn't Disney World. It is what it is. This was something.
But didn't you worry about getting more charges and never going home?
Yeah. Look, we don't ever figure that's going to happen. But I mean, obviously it's a possibility it could happen. But at the end of the day, it's like this, like I explained to you too. And this isn't nothing I'm bragging about. So I don't want to see this. This is something that's actually wrong with me. That from where I came from, like I explained to you, my first bed, my first bedroom. Yeah, it was in, I think, Waxter Center when I was a little kid. Wow. You understand what I'm saying? So there was never, I wasn't ever in like a real comfort zone. And like I said, it was, I drank, like I said, the selling drugs and the profit in there was so high. You know what I mean? I still sent money to the streets, things like that. So, but I wound up getting thrown out of Gilmer. Basically, I had the biggest ticket on the yard. And I remember it was 2009. And it was this 1-4.
What do you mean ticket? Tell people what you mean by that.
A ticket. I was basically the bookie. So I would put out football. You could put your parlays and your bets in through me. Our currency was stamps. You know what I mean? So we'd have parlays. We'd have 4 picks, 5 picks, 6 picks. Mm-hmm. Listen, man, your best pickers are in prison, man. Let me tell you, it's not lucrative, man. They hit these parlays. And so this one day, and like I said, I had the biggest ticket. Me and my partner, we're at Gilmer. And this could have been my best day. It wound up being my worst day. This is what kind of like started a little spiral. This is when I wound up getting thrown out. So it's a Sunday. It's 2009. Everybody had the same 4 pick. I remember the games. Mostly. I think Aaron Rodgers was playing Cleveland. Peyton Manning, that's back when he was with the Colts, playing some bums. Tom Brady was playing Tampa Bay back, you know what I mean, when it's New England. Was, and then at the 4 o'clock game, you know what I mean, it was that's the last game everybody needed. And everybody had New Orleans. They were giving up like 6. And basically, New Orleans was down 23-0 at the half to Miami. Me and my partner in the yard laughing about it, like, man, we're going to clean up. We brought in like $7,000 that day. We brought in like $7,000, and all these people had these same picks. But hey, sure enough, by the time we get back to the unit, Drew Brees is on fire. Anyway, long story short, New Orleans wins by 12. So I'm sitting there, everybody's 4-pick hit. I walk in my cell and I look at the first master sheet. I had already and I got like 20 of them. I had already lost by calculation basically my whole $7,000 that I took in. So now I'm in my pockets with 20 some more sheets left. I'm like, man, it just keeps going like that. we're going to have to get the knife and go to the yard. You know what I mean? Because I'm not, hell no. You know what I mean? So it got so sick, Jeff. I go out, I lean over the railing. And when you're seeing this in the federal prison, when you see like the paisas, these are the like real Mexicans that don't speak English and stuff. When you see them popping sodas and running to the store, man, and screaming on football Sunday, they're spending my stamps. I know everybody hit because they hit, everybody hit. So it was like that. So it was like one of the things for like we paid everybody, everything was cool. So, but I was on a kind of like drinking binge at the time in prison. I'd buy gallons of wine and get drunk. So I sat there. My cellie was getting out of the shoe because he went to the shoe for like 45 days for like a dirty urine because they thought somebody ratted us out. You're always going to get ratted out. They ratted us out for selling heroin. And basically, when I would touch drugs in prison, I didn't go to the small shit. I'd go ahead, wholesale it, and usually to the Spanish people, stuff like that, people that ain't got nothing to do with me. You understand what I'm saying? That way they put it down. That way less people know. People don't where you're from don't know and come begging you and snitching on you. And, you know, hey, how could go white people know, oh, yeah, I'm white, yeah, whatever. But so basically that's how they wound up running down us. Now he's getting out of the shoe this day, and I'm throwing him a party. So I buy like 5 gallons of some really good wine. So we're up there, we're getting trashed. And I got the big handicap cell. Like on the corner, you have these handicap cells where they're huge. So we're on there partying. And I mean, my cell, I get along with everybody. Like I said, you might have a guy like Steve Warshak sitting in there with a guy from the Crips, with a guy from the Bloods, with a guy from the Skinhead. Because I get along with every man. I'm not into all that. You know,
you weren't one of these people that, you know, generally you hear about cars, right? And you immediately go into the white car, the whatever car. You weren't doing that. You were kind of a free agent.
Well, listen, I'm white. You see what I'm saying? So when I go in the chow hall, I sit where the white dudes sit, all that kind of stuff. But no, I'm not like, I hang out with my own little crew of people. You know what I'm saying? So, but I'm not in no cars. No, I that's like, but you know what I mean? It's like, wherever you go, it's like you're going to have the different type of white people. You see, so I try to get more around East Coast white people. You know what I mean? Because I believe we're different. We are different out here. You know what I mean? We're not on all the like these people were like in the 1800s. You know what I mean? And to be honest with you, they're the only ones who are ever going to do anything wrong to you. You know what I mean? So it's like it's just a whole different ballgame. But that's basically, I carry myself as I called it this. And people made a joke about it, said I was starting a gang. I said, I call it man time. I'm just a man. You know what I'm saying? If you're a man, I'm a man, whatever. We get along, whatever your story is, whatever this and that, whatever. You know, if I make my judgment, you're a good person, whatever. You know, I'm not going to have people tell me who to like and be friends with. I'm not doing all that. You know what I mean? So basically, Gilmer was like that type of place. So we're all getting drunk. Next thing you know, there was this dude, and always on your units, there'll be rats. You know what I mean? Like for all FCI, basically all prisons, everybody knows the head orderly, he's a rat. You know what I mean? The only people who will come in the comments and say that I'm lying is the head orderlies. You know what I mean? The head orderly, like part of the job description is telling the counselor things going on or whatever. So there's guys like that. And then there was this one guy, he like worked at maintenance. So they used to say this stuff about him. So he's walking around, bopping around, he walks around like 3 times. And he looks in his cell each time. So I look over at him and I told everybody in there, I said, yo, if he looks in his cell one more time, snatch him in there. So he walks by, sure enough, again, I don't even know if he looked in. I snatch him, boom. So I pull him in. I get him in there. I said, man, what the hell are you doing? Blah, blah, blah. So he's sitting there. He's scared to death. So here's what I do to him, Jeff. I said, you know what? I took a big coffee mug and I filled it to the brim with this good wine. I mean, this was some good wine because I'm a drinker. And I give it to him. I say, now chug that. He chugs it, man. This guy, he's like, he sat there for like 5 minutes. He's like, oh, like this is sorry. Now get the hell out of here. So there was a game that night. And everybody took, it was San Francisco playing Arizona. So, everybody took Kurt Warner. I think Kurt Warner was a quarterback at Arizona back then. So a whole compound's got that. And I'm like, damn, watch it hit. And they got it mixed with basketball. And if this hits, it's going to be another $7,000, $8,000. So I'm stressing out, but I'm getting so twisted, So the party's going on, everything like that. He just came out of the shoe that day. I'm throwing him the party. Jimmy Gallo was next door to me. He lived in the next door cell, actually, when this happened. So Anyway, so I'm too trashed and I'm on the unit. So I'm acting wild, whatever. The CO, it's not his fault. He comes up to me, he's like, look, Foss, you gotta lock in for the night. You know, he's like, I don't want to lock you up, call codes and all that kind of crap. I'm like, all right, cool. So I lock in, but man, it's like within 5 minutes, I'm back out on the tier like an idiot, looking at the score, punches, playing with something, whatever. So they called the police, the other COs over to get me from the lieutenants, to take me to lieutenant's office, lock me up. So they try to get me to cuff up on the unit. I'm like, I ain't cuffing up on the unit. I'll cuff up at the lieutenant's office. So I go to walk over there. Now, I guess from the time me walking out there and walking over there, I guess by the cold air hitting me or something like that, I mean, I was trashed by the time I got there. Like I was told this story through the shots that I got and through what people have told me. I just remember parts of it. This is how good this stuff was, how trashed it was. So I sit here and they go to breathalyze me. Now, I must have been a rookie or something because they'll do things like this. Some of these cops, they don't understand like who's who. So he goes to give me the breathalyzer. He's pushing up to my face. He's like, and I know you weren't drinking alone. Like basically like insinuating wanting me to rat on somebody or something like that. So I said, I smack his hand. Boom. Breathalyzer smashes. Next thing you know, I'm wrestling around with them. The last thing I actually remember that there was this nurse, and not to disrespect the lady, but she's a big, strong lady, right? I'm doing all right with the cops. Next thing you know, I get like Goldberg spear or James Harrison or somebody hit me. Boom! So I'm down. I'm like, whoa. I wake up the next day in the shoe. So the SIS guy comes down. What the SIS guy is, he's like the head of investigations through the jail. And basically, he was tired of me. I've been there like 5 years. He was tired of me because he would always hear my names coming up and this and that and this and that. And, you know, so he wanted to get rid of me. So this was the perfect opportunity. But I still don't, you know, at this point in time, I don't even know what happened. So he comes to my cell. I'm like, what's up? He's like, yeah, you did it now. I'm like, you did it now. He's like, yeah, you assaulted my officers. And I'm thinking, Jesus, what did I do? You know what I mean? I don't know what I did. Now I can't get a shot and read what I did either because they sent it to the FBI, which means they sent it to the United States Attorney because any assault you get, especially on police, but even any assaults, because the last time I was in, I got into just a regular fight and they sent it to the FBI, just a regular fist fight.
They were going to look to add more charges for you.
Yes. Yeah. So what happens is I had to wait for the FBI to decline charges, say we're not going to do an outside prosecution, and then they can read me my shot and sanction me. So when I get the shot, it really ain't that bad. What it was that little tussle. And then when I got into the shoe, this other cop slammed the handcuffs on me real tight and I spit on him. So they actually didn't send that out to the FBI. They sent the other assault for breaking the breathalyzer out to the FBI. I think if they'd have sent the spitting out, that would have actually got me a street charge. But anyway, they didn't. So now I go in for my sanctions. And I mean, they railroad me. So the sanction guy actually didn't railroad me. He opened up a magazine, and the breathalyzer I broke was one of them good ones. You know, it wasn't one of these cheap ones. It was like, you know, whatever it is, digital and all that stuff. So it was $400. So he said, I got to charge you $400. So he charged me $400, which is fair. I go back to my cell in the shoe. My counselor comes walking by. He's like, yeah, Foss. I say, what's up with your sanctions? All this other, I seen that. He's like, yeah, I seen these sanctions for $400. I was like, yeah. He's like, yeah, that ain't, we ain't going to keep that. I'm like, oh, cool. He's like, yeah, now it's $800. And they actually turned it into $800. And I couldn't spend a penny out of my account. I couldn't buy stamps. I couldn't buy soap, nothing. They freeze your account. Can't put money on your phone. None of that kind of stuff.
Damn.
But none of that actually mattered to me at that time because they were sending me to the penitentiary. So that's the first thing smoking. I'm out of there. You know what I mean? They wanted me out of that jail. So now I'm hearing all these stories as I'm sitting there waiting to go to the penitentiary because they come by and you find that a CO will tell you where you're going. So I found out I'm going to Big Sandy. Big Sandy's got a name. You know what I mean? It's a pretty bad place, you know. So basically, I'm sitting there and like thoughts go through your head and you're like, damn, dude, what am I doing? You know what I mean? Now I'm 6 years in almost on no, crazy. Might have been 8 years in almost on.
You're almost about to get out and you're worried.
Yes. And now I'm going to the penitentiary. Around the lowest of the low here. You know what I'm saying? This is like, I mean, God, there's people like, if you look at the situation like that, just one with, and I knew him too. I knew Paulie, you know, with the Whitey Bulger thing. I know Paulie. I knew Paulie and Johnny from Schuylkill. They're cool. Anyway, but look at this situation with that case with Whitey Bulger. That one kid that watched the door, or they said watched the door allegedly, he actually went home. He only had like 7 years, but now he gets wrapped up in that just by being in the penitentiary.
He was just like a regular guy too. He wasn't like.
Well, there is no regular guys. Here's the deal with that. Here's the deal.
Well, I mean, like he wasn't a mob guy. I mean,
right. And what I mean, and no, but what I mean by it is this: you're in the penitentiary. He's a white guy. You understand what I'm saying? So basically, that could have been me. Look, Jeff, say it would have been me and you, and take the guy Chatter talks or whatever. Say it would have been us three. None of us from Boston. None of that. None of us in the mob. None of that. If we'd have been there and he'd have came there, we'd have had to do something to him. Let me just put it that way. You understand what I'm saying? So, but what I'm saying is like, so I'm in like a boat, like, you know, like I don't have a lot of time to do, and I could catch a lot of damn time. And plus, like I said, I'm in the mix, you know what I mean? A lot, you know. So I'm thinking that I'm hearing all these crazy stories and stuff. So of course, any human tell you they don't get nervous, they're lying. But then I thought about something. I'm like, man, my first time going to Baltimore City Jail, I was a teenager. You know what I mean? I wasn't even an adult, nowhere near it. I was like, and that was scary. That was scary. You know what I mean? When I got on that was real jail. I was a kid. You could wear your own clothes. They put me on the tier. People were trying to grab me through the bars when I first got on the tier. Talking about white boy on the tier, y'all, what kind of tennis he got on? Yo, set him down. That beat him. And of course, I had on black gummy ears. I'm all fretted. You know what I mean? I was a kid. So that was my first experience, and that was scary. So I'm thinking like, this can't be worse. You know what I mean? This can't be worse. And I'm thinking, you know, I'm not a weak dude or nothing like that. Like, you know what I mean? I can handle myself. And so I got there, and it was definitely like, when I first got there, it was locked down because like the Crips and the Muslims or something got into a war or something. So we get there on lockdown, but like all you're hearing is like shock value, because you didn't hear this in the mediums and stuff. You'll hear like shh, 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 all night on the floor. So you're like, it's people sharpening knives. You know what I mean? So all of a sudden, every time now you're going to come off this lockdown, but you're going to go right back on one because all new people came to the yard. Like, so somebody's going to get hit when these doors hit, when the yard.
So that's all it is. It's just
it's going to happen. It's going to happen. So it's like you already know these things. So it's like just total like tension. You understand what I'm saying? Like, this isn't going to be a place where there's fist fights and, you know, little dust ups and stuff. So when you finally come out, whatever happens. They either lock back down and then they let this out or that out. When we first pulled up, and this is how crazy it is, when we first pulled up to Big Sandy, there was like 46 of us on the bus. About 24 of us went to population. The other ones wouldn't even go. The other ones said, I'm going. They went to protective custody.
So like, when you pull up, like, did they just be like, oh no, I can't do this? Or they see something that like,
whatever's in their jacket or whatever gang they might be in or whatever they've done to people. I mean, look, the Federal Bureau of Prisons is a very small place. So you're going to find out stuff on everybody. Like if somebody's living bad, he's going to get caught up to. It's always.
So you're saying like essentially half of the bus decided, I'm going to check in. I can't go in here. Wow.
Yeah.
So you walk in there for the first time. What's that like?
Well, so when the yard opens, now I'd already talked to some people and stuff like that, like through the vents and like coming in and stuff like that. And when the yard opens, I knew some people already because, like I said, I'd already been in prison. You know what I mean? So I'm not like, I didn't have an unfortunate situation of being like this. Like some of these guys really get thrown in there at 20 years old. It's their first time experiencing jail or prison or anything. And that's got to be nuts for them. You know what I mean? Because, you know, I'm pretty seasoned at this point, but it's different. It's a culture shock. So I'll go to walk the yard. The yard opens. I go ahead and and I'm different. You know what I mean? I throw on my Air Max or whatever because I had the freshest shoes. All that stuff. I told you I had the ticket. I used to wear the gold chains, all that stuff. Like I had that drip. I'm like that guy who dresses real good on this stuff on the podcast. I was like that. You know what I mean? So anyway, So I get out there, so I'm different. So I'm walking around, I look, first thing I see is a group of white guys, all their faces tattooed and all this, just look at everything. You see a black guys in the corner here, Mexican guys here, so this one here, this one's that. And it's just like, it's shocking. And then you'll come, and like the first guy I run into, obviously is a black guy, because I know I know mostly black kids from my area or whatever. So like, man, what's up? But how is this place? He's breaking it all down too. So I'm like, all right. But then, then it's just people, people are people wherever you go. There's going to be scumbags. There's going to be certain things. So things wound up getting along pretty good in there. There's some things that I've seen happen, like, what I mean, that I don't like, like to get into. Like, I see some bad things happen to some people. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've heard. We've talked to Chad. We've talked to people where they detail that there were some really bad things in there. I saw an interview recently with a rapper that's at Big Sandy, and he talked about that. He said, every day there's stuff in here you see that you don't want to see. How long ultimately were you at Big Sandy for?
I was only at Big Sandy 18 months because my points dropped actually immediately, because they did everything to get my points to a 24. Because I don't have like I was in prison for nonviolent drug offense. So, right. and my age, I was over 30 or something like that. So it was hard for them to get my points to a 24. And I think I had a birthday coming right up to put me in a different turning 35 or something like that. So my points came right down. So I had to stay, I couldn't get into no trouble there. I didn't get no trouble there. Like I never went to lockup or anything there. But I was still in the mix there. Like, like, cause I like to gamble, stuff like that, and drink, they got the shine there stuff. But see there.
But you're here. So nothing too bad happened to you, right?
Nothing bad.
Okay.
I made it out. You know what I'm saying? I was only there 18 months. I didn't get in no trouble, nothing like that. I was never on lockup there or nothing like that, because it's also more lenient. It's like I had lost my phone privileges for 18 months, and I told you they froze my account, so I couldn't buy nothing. Plus, they took my store privileges anyway. So I'm using another person's phone. But see, they don't care. Like the SIS and stuff in the penitentiary, they don't care if I'm using your phone to call, because all they care about is people paying their debts. That's all they care about. There was a guy in Big Sandy. He was like some type of Eskimo or something. They found oil in his land. He used to get $10,000 a month. Okay, a check. So now he's in prison. You'd think this guy would be loaded after he did his 15, 20 years, whatever. Well, he liked to do dope, and he liked to drink. So he would buy all the dope. You know what I mean? He'd buy it in wholesale, and he'd even buy the little papers, but he wanted all the dopes. He'd buy all that throughout the month, and he'd buy all his liquor, whatever, stuff like that. So obviously this guy would get dirty urines. You know what I mean? So he would get a dirty urine, so he's got to go to lockup. You know what the counselor would do? When he would go to lockup for a dirty urine, the counselor would take him probably about this thick of these green forms that they fill out to send money to people, because the counselor knew he owed all kind of money. So he just give him his forms, let him pay the money, so there's no problems on the yard. So now nobody feels, oh, that white boy or whatever he's running with burnt them. So now they're going to hit the white guy, because that's how there's a lot of trick bags, man.
They just want to avoid like really bad shit that happens there. The more they can avoid, the better. Okay. So you go to Big Sandy, you do your time there. Where do you go after that? You get kind of knocked down. Where do you go next?
I went to Schuylkill. That's where I met a lot of like mob guys.
I want to get into some of that, because we still have to get to your other case. We don't want to be on there for hours on end. But and what we want to do, I want to have you back at some point. I think you're super interesting, and there's only so much time. We don't want to go through every story. But you go to Schuylkill, which is in Pennsylvania. It's not that far from where you're from. It's a lot lower of a yard, but in there's a lot of mob guys, right? Jimmy Coonan's in there. Mark Reiter was in there. I want to kind of center on guys like that. You told me at first you weren't a fan of Jimmy Coonan, right?
Well, here's the thing. Not that I wasn't a fan of Jimmy Coonan.
Or you didn't maybe understand him.
I thought the guy was a nut. I thought, look, all I was seeing was what I was seeing, and this isn't what he is. So now remember, because like I told you when we spoke off the record, I said, man, if I could say one thing, man, Jimmy Coonan was any disagreements we had, once I figured out life a little bit, he was actually right. You know what I mean? But we would butt heads on a lot of stuff. And I'm looking at him as some old burnt out guy that just drinks a bunch of Diet Pepsi and sits there and watches TV and walks around. You know what I mean?
Is that what he does?
Well, yeah. I mean, he's burnt out. I mean, he sits there. There's nothing else for him to do. He loves Diet Pepsi. He drinks like a case of them a day. You know what I mean? Look, when you get in there, okay, so I know Jimmy Coonan. I can tell you, I met Mark Reiter personally, like was introduced to him and everything because, well, let me talk about the Jimmy Coonan thing. So me and Jimmy Coonan would kind of like butt heads on like certain things he would say about the government, about this and about that. And I'll just be like, man, this is just a bitter dude. You know what I mean? Blah, blah, blah. But man, when I got out and I started looking around and then certain things just start happening in the United States and stuff, man, this guy's like Nostradamus. He like called a bunch of stuff, man. Do you ever get to the point when you're like out in, you're out in regular world and you think, God damn, Jimmy, he was right. he knew. 100%. 100%. Listen, they need to let him out. And Mark Reiter, they need to let him out. Tony Aiello was my cell buddy. Okay, not the son.
So let me just say, Tony has been in prison since the early '80s. He was part of the Sicilian connection with the drugs and the Bonanno family. He's been in since the '80s. His son Ace was involved with Dominic Sicali and Vinny Gorgeous and those guys. He's also in prison. And so he was kind of the old guy in that area. He'd been around forever. Tell me about him. You've told me some good stories about Tony Aiello.
Man, listen. Man, I love Tony, man. Look, me and Tony, he wound up coming to Schuylkill after I was already there. So when he's arriving, let me tell you like this. Whenever you get a lot of any type of crew of guys, like I said, this was dominated by mob guys, Schuylkill was. So it was like Gossip Girls. A lot of these mob guys and stuff, that's what they do. They talk about each other. You know what I mean? And they cut each other's throats for anything. You know what I mean? They just want to everybody wants to be the boss, the man, has something bad to say about this, whatever. Well, they used to hate on the old man. Like before he even got there, like, oh man, he's coming here. But here's the reason why. Look, Tony Aiello, he's a hustler, man. He's a gangster. Look, he's in the mix. So and people respect the old man. Me and him wind up becoming cellies because he's at the cell with Jimmy Coonan. Now my cellie leaves to go to like one of the medical facilities or whatever. And I was on the top bunk. My cellie was older. So he leaves to go to a medical facility. So when he leaves, I'm in the yard lifting weights. Now, for all I know, I don't even know my cellie's gone. Tony Aiello and Jimmy Coonan are cellies. But when they were cellies, man, it was like grumpy old men. These two, oh my God, they couldn't look. Talk about button heads, man. Look. So it was funny. So I'm coming back from the yard from working out. I see my cell door. I'm like, who the hell's in my cell? I go in the cell. All of a sudden I see Tony sit there. He said, E, what's up, E? I said, well, what's up, Tony? And I see him moving all this stuff in. Boom, boom, boom. I'm like, what's up? He's like, E, I'm in your cellie. I said, yeah, you got the bottom bunk, right? He's like, hey, yeah, of course. I said, yeah, of course. Go ahead, Tony. He's like, I got you a bowl. So look, me and him became close, man. He's the good old guy, man. What happened was this. He was like he would talk about his son. He loves his son, man. Talks about his son all the time. His son's got a good name. Son's big, strong dude, right? From what I hear. Mm-hmm. I know exactly where he gets it from. The old man, listen, he was probably 72 at the time, man. He would run 20 laps. He would do pull-ups. He could probably deadlift 400 pounds. You know what I mean? At 72 years old, right? But Reiter was another one, strong dude, workout, stuff like that. These older guys, man, these guys are tough men, man. They got these life sentences and stuff. Now, a lot of people don't know this about Tony. The reason why Tony got life, they offered Tony 15 years. Okay, now his case happened back in the early 80s. Now, if you remember anything about him, he was the last one arrested because he went on the run and went under an alias, Frank Mana or something like that. Like he grew a beard and everything. So he went up to Lake Buffalo and he was living there. So now he's on the run for a couple years. Now, while he was on the run, since he didn't get locked up, he's on the run. They changed the laws to where as though the government can confiscate all your property and all this kind of stuff, some type of law with drug cases or something. They changed. If he would have got locked up originally, they couldn't have touched none of his properties. So here's the deal. So the law changes. They catch Tony. All of a sudden, they all like if you notice, I believe everybody else on the Pizza Connection, even the bosses and everything, they've been out of prison.
Yeah.
Tony got life plus 40 years because they offered him a plea deal. They offered him 15 years. And they had parole back then. He'd done like 8 years. But with that deal, he had to forfeit all his properties. And I mean, listen, the man was loaded. The man was loaded, especially for the 80s. He was loaded for now, but I mean, for the 80s, he had a strip mall in California. He had all kind of stuff. But so he didn't want to lose none of that. So, and he's thinking there was nobody ratting on him, like no like drug dealers or nothing coming ratting on him. There was no drugs like directly on him. Okay. So he's figuring, you know, he could beat him. Here's how they get him. You know who they bring in to testify against them? People who actually liked him, like regular people and stuff. What happened was they like I said, he bought a strip mall, but he used the name Frankie Mana and brought a strip mall of cash and stuff like that. So they're calling these people now in to testify and say, yes, have you ever brought, you know, a guy named Frankie Mana? Yeah, can you put him out of court? Yeah, he's right there. Great guy. Yeah, we did the deal for the strip mall. Okay, yeah, you're done. Boom, boom. Basically built that up. So now you got the jury looking at this, and he's Sicilian, you know, he's not even American. You know, he could barely read, barely write, barely speak English. And they're looking at him with all this millions of dollars worth of stuff. You know what I mean? And
how did he
that's
do
what happened. He got convicted. They crushed him for exercising his right to go to trial, basically. You know, why not just give him the 15 or the 20 years? No, they gave him life plus 40 years. But so me and him, we were cellies, and he went for an operation, and they screwed the man up. Okay. Like when I tell you they screwed him up, they were supposed to do something when, you know, when people get older and stuff, whatever. So they messed up something with his, you know, his penis, whatever, cut it or so. I don't know what it was, but he would bleed everywhere and he'd have to wear these things and stuff. So like the cell would get all screwed up. Now, look, I'm not going to sit here. I'm not, like I said, man, it would get on my nerves, but man, it's Tony, man. Tony's doing a life sentence. Tony's a good man. Tony's a great man. You know, he's a good dude, man. So it would suck. But then one day the unit manager comes down in there. It's like, look at this cell and all this stuff. Because Tony would have stuff hanging there. I was outside working out. I'm all sweating and all that. So something happens. The unit manager's like, whoa. And he separates me and Tony. So here's the thing where I say, you know, people hated on Tony, really didn't like have his back and stuff like that is, so Tony had nice things, man. Tony had these 2 big gold chains and nobody took them from him. So I'm not saying that. So we had I know the guy who was behind what happened was our head orderly, because they're usually dope fiends. And like I said, they're always rats and they're always stealing, doing all kind of snaky stuff when people go to the shoe and stuff. So anyway, we had probably the worst one ever. So Tony's known for having money and stuff. So anyway, I'm in the one cell. It's after 4 o'clock count. Tony comes walking the cell. I'm like, what's up? He's like, they got to me. I said, hey, what? He's like, they got me. I said, what the hell are you talking about? He's like, somebody broke in my lock. That's how he talks. Don't even say locker. I said, are you fucking serious? So I start beating the drum. I'm going nuts, blah, blah, blah. All this stuff's going on. We actually wound up getting back one of the chains. So basically, everything has to come back. I know who's behind it. Jeff, I'm going home in like 4 months. But our blood's boiling, man. This is my dude. You know what I'm saying? And this is all facts. So here's how bad people are, man, and how bad they try to set me up. I'm going home in a couple months. So the dudes who were trying to get over on Tony, rob Tony, they wanted to get rid of me so bad. I went to the yard one morning to work out. I would go ahead. I'd work out. The dude, Ray Argentina, he hold weights for me. I would hold him for like Richie Gotti and them. And so I get in between, and then I go do cardio. It'd be like Vito Guzzo over there doing jumping rope. So I go up to where they hang out. We used to call it like Barn. Who was that? Chris with him? Ain't that kid's name Chris?
Chris, yeah, Labate.
Yeah, Chris was there. Yeah. So I go up to, we used to call it Barnaby Hill or whatever. Huck was there too. You know, Huck, Thomas Carbone.
Oh, yeah. Sure.
So I go up there because I would kick it with them while I'm waiting for him to call recall. So we're sitting there, and little Frankie DePietro, he hangs around like the Lucchese guys and all that. And he's a little wild guy, older guy, funny as hell. He's like, hey, man, what the hell is that? I said, what the hell is what? He's like, in your bag, man. He goes down and pulls out of my bag a goddamn big ass screw that was sharpened. So somebody, while I was working out, actually either did it from the yard or somehow got that in the yard and put it in my bag, hoping that when I go back through the metal detector, boop, 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 I get caught with a knife.
So they were hoping, they kind of knew you were kind of, taking care of the guy. He was an old guy. They were hoping that you could get something planted on you so that you would get out of there and they could then rob the guy for real. Damn,
Yes.
that's scammy, man.
Yes. And it's just like, man, and honestly, some of these, I'm not going to put a name out there or nothing like that, but one of the Italian dudes said something I really didn't like. He was kind of sticking up for me or whatever, but it was still something I didn't like. He's just like, man, you see all the stuff this guy's causing, talking about Tony. And I'm like,
damn.
I'm like, man, this is pretty cutthroat. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, it really is.
Well, let me say this. He wasn't a banana guy, so I'll say that much.
Okay. Well, I got to ask you, because I want to, you eventually get out and want to talk about your other case, but I want to ask you, this is a pretty iconic photo here. I know a lot of these guys you probably remember. Norman's there.
Charlie Stango.
Yeah, tell me about this photo.
All right, I ain't got my glasses on, but I see the old man Charlie Stango from Jersey. You know who he is back here standing next to
Yeah, he's in the back. Yep.
Yeah. Look, one thing I tell you about him is, have you ever seen the Bronx Tale?
Yeah, absolutely.
Remember Mush?
Oh yeah.
Charlie's worse.
So I'll kind of just real quick tell who we are. Up top left, Richie Gotti. You obviously got Vito Guzzo right under him. Charlie Stango, Chris Labate in the gray, and then you got Aiello to his immediate right.
Is that Richie? Are you sure that's Richie?
That's Richie.
I don't got my glasses, but I don't know.
Up in the left corner, that's Richie. And then the top right, that's Andrew Marola.
I remember Andy.
With Tony Sr. And then bottom would be you got Norman in the middle. I'm not sure who
that's
left.
See the kid with the hair?
That's Greek guy, I believe.
That's Greek Teddy. That's
then
remember I told you he was a Vito's co-defendant on something.
Yep.
And what's Greek Rogers, the guy with the hat on?
Yep. Yeah. So you got, those are some. A lot of those guys are pretty heavy hitters. You got, Vito's a real heavy hitter. Tony Sr., Norman. There were a lot of guys in there. You mentioned, Mark Reiter at one point. Before we kind of get to you being released, you hit Mark Reiter pretty hard with a ticket, didn't you? You essentially found out a way where you could get over on him, right?
No, it's not getting over. I still gamble my money. But here's the deal. Mark had a ticket.
But you were kind of, you knew about.
Well, look, Mark had a ticket also, and I had a ticket. We were in competition with each other, right? But we really didn't know each other. We never had spoke. So basically is this. Mark at that time had already been in 20 some years or something like that, right? So I still got younger friends on the street who gamble, you know what I mean? Because we gamble on the street, you know what I mean? So I read that book from Tim Donaghy, the referee that, went to prison for fixing the NBA stuff and all. And he revealed something in that book. He said that he would know how the game would go by when they assigned the referees. And they assigned the referees on 12 o'clock, basically lunchtime, but on Pacific time. We have to have our tickets out by basically lunchtime, our time. Mm-hmm. So it's that 3-hour window. So now when I get out at 4 o'clock count, I wait till 4:30 and I go to the computer. My buddy sends me the actual lines. So the lines come out, they announce the referees, and like sometimes say an over-under on a basketball game, which is the total score. Say the over-under was 208. Okay. And then but when they announce the referees, that over-under might go to 216. So I would have all that information and leverage. I'd keep my ticket the same as to not put nobody on with it. So every night, Mark's ticket at Schuylkill was bringing in a lot. You know what I mean? Because, it was Mark. Look, they call him like in there. They're like, yeah, that's the king of New York and all that stuff. Because that's what happened. I'm sitting in there. I'm sitting in my unit watching sports, and it's wintertime. So somebody's like, the king of New York's out there for you. I said, who? He's like, the king of New York. I said, who the fuck's king? It's like the guy marked that. So I look outside. I was like, oh man, it's this old bastard. He's standing there. Mark's a big dude. I'm 6'2". Mark's taller than me, right? So I come walking out. I'm like, hey, what's up? But he's a gentleman, and he shakes hands. Hey, how you doing? You're E, right? Yeah. So he's like, oh, well, what the hell's going on? Every night, you're trimming me for $500, $1,000 worth. And I was, you know what I mean? Because with the crew that I'm betting with, you know what I mean? We're getting them for like $500 a night, $1,000 some nights.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? There wasn't a night that I missed. He's like, I was like, nah, man. I said, I'm just lucky. He's like, we're going to cut the bullshit. You know what I mean? The guy's an alpha. You know what I mean? The guy's an alpha dude. I'm an alpha dude too, but I'm younger and stuff like that. But I respect that. You know what I mean? Like,
so did you ever tell him what you were up to?
Huh? Well, no, I was like, look, man. He's like, you're always betting over unders. He's like, look, I'm just gonna cut you off. You can't bet on my ticket anymore. Then eventually I did tell him. I was like, Mark, I was like, here's the deal, man. Because he come up, we wound up working out and stuff like that and being in the yards. I wound up talking to him. He's got a lot. Class act, dude, man. He needs to be out. Why isn't he out?
Oh, yeah, he's been inside a long time. I mean, I know they're still fighting to get him out. But you say you ultimately became pretty cool with him.
Yeah. We became cool. And then the last time I ran into him was the second time I went. He's actually in Allenwood Low. He's in the Low. He's been there for a while. This is
another pretty good photo, I believe, from Schuylkill. This is another one. You got a lot of guys there. Ray Argentina's in there. Huck, you know. I also want to ask you about before we kind of go to your next when you get released. You were around the Kojak Guillotino, right?
That was his time. Yes.
Who, as we know, according to the government, was with Tommy Patera when Willie Boy was whacked. What was he like?
Thorough, tough. Look, when you get around them guys, man, I'm going to be honest with you. I've noticed this. Some of them guys, they're mob guys, and you'll look at it and it's like certain things. But some guys are street guys, you know, and mob guys too. Like I look at a John Gotti like a street tough mob guy, like a tough guy. Vinny Kojak's real name is Vinny. Tough guy, tough old man, 70 years old, big and fat, eats all day. He's got a ticket. He's in the mixed gambles. He's, you know, plays poker, everything like that. I mean, me and him used to argue and stuff like that. Like, not like really like argue, but like, you go plaster and stuff. He'd come down, you know. So I seen him now. This man, 70 years old. His celly is arguing with some other kid about the TV. So him and the kid step in the cell. Now, Vinny's celly's probably like my age, maybe 2-3 years old, bigger dude. So he goes in there and he's not winning. You know what I mean? Vinny took his fat ass in there, 70 some years old he is. Vinny went in there and wore to do that with a lock. You know what I'm saying?
Wow.
Like Vinny's not going for nothing, man. Vinny's cool, man. Vinny's a good dude, man.
A lot of thorough individuals for sure.
Okay.
And look, I'm sure we'll speak to you again. I'm sure we'll hear all sorts of other stories about some of these guys, but you know, you're around some big people, Reiter, Jimmy Coonan, you know, Vito. Real quick before we go, Vito, he has a reputation on the street of being a very ruthless guy, right? He was shot multiple times. What kind of guy was he like?
He worked out like a maniac.
Yeah, we see that.
He got into a few things there, a few scraps or something. And then this is after I left, they went down to the Low and got into it with the Albanians or something but he was cool. You know what I mean? Like he was
real quick.
Cool.
Do those guys, like, let's say when you're eating, do they all sit together? I guess I'll ask, a lot of people see this. Maybe they don't have the thought of prisons, but they think of prison as like Goodfellas, where they get all their stuff and they make all their food. It's not necessarily like that. I mean, right?
Goodfellas is exaggeration. You know what I mean? Because maybe back then. Listen, you're talking the 80s and stuff. So
were they eating like? Did they get any like cold cuts or anything like that?
Well, yes, but all of us did. In other words, there's people working the kitchen who steal that out of the kitchen, stuff like that. So no, nobody's pulling out like Dom Perignon and like how you see him go. No, it's not that. You're not in your own little thing cooking steaks and no. But people cook, man. People cook in there. Like I like when I was at Gilmer, that was and Schuylkill was good too. Like that's what they would argue over. Like they would argue over that. Like Coonan and Aiello, they'd go at it over ham, actual ham. Like just because there's always going to be a guy stealing out of the kitchen. He's not getting money from home. And you know what? The COs will let a guy, if their kitchen's running good, the compound's getting fed good, everything like that. There's no problems in the kitchen. The COs let them have their way, which they should. You know, they're only making $1 a day. So now you'll get a guy like a Coonan or a me or an Aiello or somebody, but Aiello, we always call Aiello behind his back the octopus because he's just got tentacles and everything. He was a gambler. I'm not going to tell you, but put it this way, he gets in the mix. So anyway, him and Coonan would beef about stuff like that. You know what I mean? Or Coonan would throw a shot at him. There might be somebody who owes Aiello money, and Coonan would be like, hey, Tony, I just talked to Don. He sent me $600. Hey, walk in the cell. Tony would be like, that Irish motherfucker. You know what I mean? But they would always become cool and stuff. But
right.
It's just a lot. It honestly, a lot of it, man, and I don't want to glorify none of it because at the end of the day, you're looking at people like these people aren't coming home. Hopefully they are. But, you know, at this present time, these people did all their life in jail, man.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, you look at Coonan and Aiello and Reiter. I mean, they've been all there for, longer than I've been alive. I mean, I was born in 89. So, you know, it's crazy to think about. They've been in a box that. So you get out of what year?
I went to the halfway house October 2013, and I was officially released June 12th of 2014.
Okay. So you did about 9 years?
No, 10 years, 10 months. I was locked up from
10 years, 10 months.
August of 03.
Okay. So almost 11 years you did. Wow. Okay. So you come home, you go back to Baltimore, the Baltimore area. What did you want to do? Did you want to just what was your plan? Did you want to live a regular life?
Honestly, what I actually did, I had a buddy that he has an appraisal company. He's the appraiser, certified appraiser and stuff like that. I started doing appraisals, and I did residential appraisals for home appraisals for about 5 years. Okay. I did pretty well at that. I got my real estate license. And you know, I sold a few houses, stuff like that. I've done some flips, you know, things like that with houses. And
so you were doing okay. You found, you know, for yourself, you found a way to integrate back into society. You know, you weren't reoffending. You had a pretty good life. You had a personal life. You had some money coming in. You were doing pretty good. And for someone like you, this is not 2024. This is 10-ish years ago. You're doing what you can to survive. But the word conspiracy comes around again.
Here's what happens. So I'm not under investigation or anything. Now I'm doing all the real estate and stuff. Now, look, I'm not going to lie. Of course, I was doing my thing on the side. I wasn't involved with what I got jammed up in. Now, the crazy thing that happens is this. It was October 6, 2018. This was the night that this phone call happened. My buddy calls me. I'm going down the MMA fights down. This guy, John Raleigh, puts him on down the Baltimore arena. Same night McGregor and Khabib fought, because I actually went out to Jimmy Seafood later and watched that fight. So as I'm headed down there, I was with my girlfriend at the time, and my buddy calls me. He's like, yo, what are you doing? I said, I'm going down to fights. He's like, oh, cool. I might stop down. I said, all right, yeah, cool. If you stop down, make sure you bring your girl. I'm with Stacy. Basically, I'm telling him, I'm with my girlfriend, bring your girlfriend, and don't bring no other chick or something. So my girl thinks I go out with other chicks and stuff. Basically, that's what I'm telling him. I'm not going to tell somebody to bring kilos of coke to the damn fight. And he never even showed up anyway. He never even showed up that night. So anyway, that actual phone call and some surveillance had never seen nothing. They seen me go get beard dye and cigarettes. That actually got me indicted by the feds. And I wound up, basically what happened was that phone call happened. So I wound up going to Las Vegas. So I was in Las Vegas. I get back from Las Vegas sometimes in early November. Now, about the middle of November, probably November 14th, all of a sudden, me and my girlfriend had just went out to dinner. We come in, we're in bed. It's like 4 a.m. All of a sudden, there's a bunch of smoke like coming through the house. Like, shh. So she wakes up. She's like, what's going on? I was like, I don't know. So I'm hearing all this noise. So it was like something out of a Will Smith movie, man. It was crazy. So I look out the back window, and we got like a grass alley because I was living in Perry Hall at the time in a nice townhouse. Not in the hood, none of that kind of stuff. No drugs were ever in there, none of that kind of stuff. So we got like a grass alley. I look out the window. Next thing you know, I got a red beam on me. I'm like, oh, shit. She's like, what's going on? I was like, they're raiding us. She's like, for what? Because she's never seen nothing. She was square. She worked for BG 20 years, whatever. So I said, don't worry, it's for me. You know what I mean? Obviously, it's for me. I was like, I don't know what's going on. You know what I mean? Who knows? So next thing you know, they locked me up. They don't even say no. But basically, they threw like concussion grenades and these smoke bombs in the house and all this stuff. Now, you know that there's only me, my girl, and she's got 2 daughters and my dog in there. You know, say in the trap house and all. So I actually surrendered. So I walked down the steps while all this going on. And now they're in military clothing and stuff like that, which was weird to me. So I surrendered. I cuff up, whatever. And they say to me, they're like, they basically say, who's in the house? I said, my girl, her 2 kids, and my dog. Don't go shooting anybody or anything like that. They're like, we're not. Next thing you know, dude, they had the guns in their heads. They're doing all this crazy shit. And I'm just like, what the hell is wrong with you people? So even though I'm cuffed and stuff like that, it leads to a big boo. So we get into whatever. They're like, get him out of here. He's nuts and all this kind of stuff. So I get to jail. Now it's a state case. So I'm like, there's no way that I'll lose. You know what I mean? But they won't give me bail. So I'm like, now within this conspiracy, I'm locked up. I'm sitting in the bullpen with a bunch of people I don't know. I only know one person, and that's my buddy who made the call. I'm like, who are all these people? What's going on? So they have found probably some people with some bricks and this and that, but there's no phone calls between me and these people. No, nothing. I don't even know these people. So, like I said, it's the state. So I'm going to trial. I don't care. Eventually, I have like 2 or 3 bail reviews. Eventually, they let me out on the box because the state courts are more fair. They're like, hey, you got to come up with some evidence on him, man. Like, what is he charged with? You know what I mean? They actually lied in court and said something about fentanyl or something like that. Like, dude, I never seen fentanyl. You know what I'm saying? Like, but they've never charged me with it either. They were saying that at a bail review to basically make me look like, public enemy #1 type deal. They didn't say that they've never caught me or not. They x-rayed my walls. They did all that. So when they let me out on the box, I'm out not even 2 weeks, man. And next thing you know, boom, here they come, damn feds. You know what I'm saying? So it's like they lock me up. So now I look at my charge, and now this time I look at how it breaks down. Remember how I told you before the drug amount was just the drug amount for everybody. Now they're breaking it down. And obviously, you kept calling me no drugs. You really got me you don't got me on the phone talking about drugs. I don't call Coke girl and all that type of stuff.
Real quick. I just got to ask you. According to the indictment, I just want to read what this says, okay? During October, November of 2018, similar exchanges were intercepted. Investigators determined that several of the intercepted exchanges referred to, quote, ounces of cocaine and arrangements for Foss and co-conspirator 1 to meet. In addition, investigators identified several patterns in the exchange, including that conspirator 1 would often report that he was coming from the, quote, stadium when he was on the way to deliver narcotics to Foss. Additionally, law enforcement deduced that co-conspirator 1 would obtain cocaine to supply to Foss from an address near Camden Yards Stadium, which served as the, quote, residence of other co-conspirators.
Right. That's just the whole, like I said, if you read that, that's just the whole conspiracy as a whole.
Right.
You know what I mean?
So you're saying they essentially said you were referring to, like when you said bring your girl, they assume you're referring to cocaine.
Yes. Like I never got caught with nothing or,
right.
You know what I mean? Nothing like that. So basically what they do is they just throw that's just them throwing the whole conspiracy together or whatever like that. So if my friend is coming up to hang out with me or whatever, you know what I mean? Even if we go out to a club or whatever, like that night we're going to go out to a fight. I remember one time it was 2 pounds of shrimp. I think somebody ordered 2 pounds of shrimp and it really was 2 pounds of shrimp. And they try to say that could have been cocaine. You know what I mean? And then they say that they got surveillance, but they really don't got surveillance. They've never shown a picture of it or anything. But basically with that situation, I got charged with the weakest cocaine charge you can get, which is a 0 to 20, no mandatory minimum. Level on the guidelines, I mean, it's like a 22. You plead guilty, so you go to a level 19. I'm a category 3, which I should have been a category 2, but I was category 3. So it was like I wound up getting 42 months for that. But basically for that conversation, and to be honest with you, like I said, I did do my own thing, but for that conspiracy and what they're saying about that, that's not true. That's not cocaine. That's not none of that stuff. You know what I mean? There could be stuff like a lot of us out here, like a lot of people, like they could just use your words to mean anything. It could be stereotypes.
No, that's the thing about the conspiracy thing and the whole wiretap thing. I mean, I have a friend, a dear friend. We were friends. We were kids. He did almost 10 years in prison for conspiracy in the feds, and they didn't catch him with any drugs. But, you know, he lived a lot like you. He had a nice car. He had this and had that. And I think for him, and I'm sure with you, similar situation with you, I always think and I see it with mobsters, right? They have a life and you can't necessarily understand where the money comes from, right? You don't have a job, yet you have a beautiful home and all this stuff. And I think sometimes that's really the big issue, the stunting, and you can't really prove where you got the money from. So you would ultimately do a couple of years. You got out in late 2021, and you've been out ever since. I guess the question I have is, are you done with that life?
No, I haven't been out ever since. I just went to jail in August. And yeah, I am actually done with the life. I'll tell you what happened to me just real quick in August. And obviously, I beat the case, but I just didn't get a bail. I got no right to bail. So my lawyer got me a quick court date. So I was in there like 3.5, 4 months. Basically, I do like a lot of, I'm in real estate. So I do a lot of like flips and remodeling, stuff like that. So I got to pay contractors like when they do jobs.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of this is cash. Okay. So I had a bag of cash. All right. And I put it at somebody's house for 10 minutes. The person steals it. You know what I mean? So anyway, being the person wind up catching up to each other and things happen. I get some of my money back, but then they don't even have a job or nothing. They say I took $50,000 from them at a hotel at the Comfort Inn. Like, who's got 50 grand cash? We're not talking about the Foxwood casinos or MGM. We're talking about the Comfort Inn. You know what I mean?
If you're past, it definitely is hard. Like, if it were me, I could just say, well, I don't know, I got it from a casino. But for you, it's different.
Well, here's the thing. This is just this person who's saying this doesn't even have a job. Their car got repoed. I mean, so why would you have 50 grand cash? And where'd you get it from if you don't got a job? You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. But, you know, the police turned around. They locked me up. They charged me with robbery. But and they wouldn't give me a bail. And I sat there. And when the court date came, I beat the case. They threw the case out, you know, because it was a lie. You know what I mean? That they were like, when they looked into it, they're like, this is, who does this? You know what I mean? And then the person who said it later on down the road has said that they heard voices telling them to steal my money.
So it was a lunatic.
Right.
Do you think it does seem like this, really outside your first case, that was, I guess, kind of unlucky, but it does seem like you are a bit unlucky in life, right? You know, where trouble just seems to find you. You're a guy who I think is actively trying to change, right? You have a different life now. This last case, we don't really include, but it does seem like you're a bit unlucky. Do you think you're just do you ever think you'll just kind of wind to the rest of your life and not ever worry about that stuff again?
Like, honestly, like, you got to think, I don't get in trouble, man. Like, I'm not like the guy. I don't get to here and I don't get into like fights at bars and stuff. Like I said, I'm almost 50. I really don't go out, you know, but it's just that when this kind of stuff comes, man, it's just like, it just seems like knock my head off. And at the end of the day, it's like, so do I always got in the back of my mind, just anything can happen? Like, yeah. I know that you can come get wiped off the street at any time. I mean,
well, it seems like your life, at least when I'm looking at mine, like a lot of the things that you're doing, like, are fairly trivial a lot of the time. Like, you're going to a UFC fight, and you're saying, hey, come with your girl. Like, anybody does that. But like, for someone like you, it does seem a little bit tough. And look, in this whole discussion, I mean, essentially since the late 90s until today, you've spent a lot of your life in prison. You've spent, you know, a quarter of your life in prison. You've been under a watchful eye for 20-ish years. I mean, you've only been alive for 47 years. So
I've probably spent altogether, if you count jail and everything like that, behind bars, I've probably like 21 years.
Do you think you've wasted a lot of your life?
Hell yeah. But I've done, listen, man, like, look, you'll see like you'll see on here, like I watch these channels and I look at these prison guys, right?
Yeah.
A lot of the guys making the content and stuff like that. And I'm talking about the white guys, like, you know what I mean, that I see most of the time. I'm not talking about Chad.
It's really all there are.
He's the real deal. But like, I see some of these guys and I'm just like, you know, I look at them as crazy because they actually get into this. They actually have a better life. They got all these opportunities. They got parents. They got this. Basically, a lot of them are just drug addicts who stole from everybody and then did something real stupid and wound up in prison and now want to tell like these stories about how life is. You're telling people how life is when you went to prison and somebody told you how to live. You know what I mean? Like when you hear these guys, it's just like I can't respect that. Like, I don't like to use it. Look, I don't like using anything as an excuse, man. I've had a lot of good things in my life too, and you know, there's people, I believe in God, and there's people that you know, you got children who are born without limbs. You know, you got people who are born blind. You got people who get. I mean, I've been blessed. You know what I mean? I've just made. You know, I was born into this a street life. I was born into it. And
do you think that when you just got out of prison, do you think that's the last time you ever be at federal prison? Do you think you'll ever go back again?
No, hell no. I don't. Look,
of course you don't hope.
Right. Hell no. I'm too.
Do you like any prison content creators?
Chad Marks, because I know about him. I got a big Sandy after he left.
You know he's the truth.
Yeah, he's a real deal. And he's helped a lot of people. The guy's helped a lot of people. Who else is there? Most of the guy with no shirt. Which we call it, Sammy the Bull. He talks about prison, right? But
oh yeah, what do you think of him?
Well, basically, they call him Sammy the Bull. I call him Mary Poppins. You know what I mean? Because I know him that. He's known. He's always wanted to put people down and stuff like that, and be like, "This was a nobody. This was nobody." Dude, you were like known for holding John Gotti's umbrella, and then telling on John Gotti. And when you're sitting here I can't say if he's lying about a lot of his mob stuff. But I know he's lying a lot about all his prison stuff. He says he's on lockup for 6 years. No, that was for your protection. Say that. That was for your protection. You weren't on real yards.
Well, he's not the biggest fan of mine. So I mean,
well, I seen I like look at stuff. I seen how you guys had whatever he said and you said, and I actually seen somebody like in the comment section. And I'd like to say, if this person's back in the comment section, rethink your comment. Because he said, Jeff, you're happy Sammy mentioned you. Listen, man, that would be a first. Because usually if he mentions somebody, right. Usually if Sammy the Bull mentions somebody, they're going to prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, look, Michael Franzese has mentioned me, and that was a lot better. I mean, he's at least a bit respectable. But yeah, Sammy is a guy who I think he believes a lot of these stories at this point. And look, I think it's almost in a way like putting him out there is a bit, I think, just a bad idea.
I think something real quick about that.
Yeah.
With him and the guy that you said, Michael Franzese, the guy, you can tell that guy Michael Franzese, you like him or not. He's got class, you know what I mean? He's got respect. And I guess he's on like, you know, a holy roller, not a holy roller, but you know, he turns life around God, whatever.
Sure.
So this is how hypocritical the guy Sammy is. They're getting into an argument. And so Franzese pulls back and says, "Oh, that's baloney, Sammy." So, all right, yeah, okay, it was pretty corny, but he's like, "What? First off, Sammy's not in the mob. You know, he thinks he's in the mob. You've been a rat longer than you were a mob boss or underboss." So look, so he tells the guy Franzese, he's like, you know, he's like, you know, what have you done? What are you known for? What is this? What is that? And you didn't do that. Okay. First and foremost, dude, that dude was driving around in a private jet.
Right.
You were holding John Gotti's umbrella. If it wasn't for, and then he's like, if it wasn't for this, and then he's kind of like coaxing the man, like, you know what I mean? Like, what have you done? Like wanting the guy to say, if this guy has ever killed anybody or not, who knows, who cares? But like the last person you're ever going to say, "Hey, I killed somebody too," is Sammy the Bull. You know what I mean?
I mean, not for nothing though. Like Sammy didn't really kill anyone either, other than a child and a guy when he was like 20. So like,
the guy seems miserable. He seems a little demented, dude. He seems a little bit demented. Like he tells a story about that when he's in jail. It's funny when he's talking about corn fed or something. You know, yeah, it was corn fed. Oh no, I'll tell you what he said to he tried to say to Franzese or whatever, like, "Oh, a real mobster wouldn't say baloney." Well, you know what? Franzese should have told him, "No, Sammy, a real mobster wouldn't have Odin tattooed on his body from some white power guy." You
was a dropout, by the way.
Right. Well, yeah, because listen, ADX, he was in ADX for his protection. And listen, if you listen to the guy talking about prison, you can tell he's phony. And especially if you've been in prison, then when he really gets down into it, he says it's so like he really like romanticizes his relationship with Cornfed or whatever this guy's name is, the tattoo. Yeah, I'm like, man, was he feeding you the corn? I don't know what was going on with these people. But at the end of the day, that's not how prison works. You see what happened to Whitey Bulger. It would have been 100 times worse for Sammy Gravana or Mary Poppins, whatever you want to call them. You know what I'm saying? It's just like, see, he's telling people like, he's like, oh, and I got respect. And that you were on a protective custody yard. You weren't on lockup for 6 years. You were on protective custody in a hole because they couldn't put you nowhere because somebody would beat you up. You know what I mean? Look, when you come in, one thing is that you can't take streets to prison. You can't bring prison to streets, or else you're going to be very disappointed. They check the guns in when you get to the joint. You know what I'm saying? And this isn't, and even in this day and age, that type of lifestyle, dude, nobody's coming and sitting down because you call them in and going to let you walk and go grab a gun and shoot them in the back. Stop it. Who does that? Who's going to do that?
Even it's funny because even Sammy has gotten people like you upset who you just get upset with some of the things he says about prison. That sounds stupid. But yeah, you're not the only person to be upset by his comments. Eric, great story. I mean, it's a wild life you've lived. I think one that does give you a bit of regret because you have spent a lot of your life in, the control of the federal government and the state. But you have a lot of life left to live, and I don't think that's something you should lose sight of. I think I'm sure you know this. When it's really bad, I think you got to think of people like Mark, and Tony and those guys, the guys that, Mark, think about Mark Reiter. Mark Reiter has to watch Anthony Center, a person who killed dozens of people, walk out of prison. Think about him. That's got to be really hard to swallow.
I mean, I don't understand it. I don't understand. Listen, Mark should be out. Tony Aiello should be out. I mean, and
think about all the guys that died. Peter Gotti, Frank Licasio, Bobby Mann is in his 90s and in prison. So it's hard to stomach, I think.
The one old man outlived though. He died in the street, right? Sonny Francis.
Sonny, yeah.
He was like the oldest
100 years old when he got out.
Yeah, how old was he? 100?
He was 100 when he got out, yeah.
Wow. He beat, well, you know what? In his mind, that guy, I've heard about him. They say he was a real gangster. In his mind, he beat him because he didn't die in there.
Well, that's what he said. That's what he essentially said. He's, and I think that's the thing. I mean, Michael can also say his father was Sonny Franzese, which many people can. Eric, I think, you and I will have to speak again. I think you're a guy who, I think with some polishing, you could have a real future on here. I think you have a really interesting story, and, I'm glad you reached out to me. It's funny you mentioned Tim Donaghy. You read his book. The post that I put out about trying to find people that have went to federal prison, he reached out to me randomly.
Did he?
Yeah, he reached out to me yesterday. He's like, hey, I'm Tim Donaghy. I was at the Federal Prison Center in Pensacola. And I'm thinking, oh, that was a country club you were at. But, maybe we'll speak to him too. But, Eric, I really appreciate your time. And I'm glad you were able to come on and chat. I'm hoping we can speak again.
Oh, definitely.
Anything you want people to know before you go?
Just that, listen, I know I smile a lot and I'm kind of like that type of person, but like I'm not glorifying prison or anything like that. Like, and people out there got to understand, like, it gets worse and it gets worse and it gets worse. And that's in any game that you go into, anything like that. There's too much money out here. And you know what? Even if it's not, man, trust me, it's not worth it, man. It's lost souls. It's just people. And you know what it just is, Jeff? It's just stories. It's just stories.
Yeah. No, and in the end, I think you realize, like, all those stories are just, when you come out here, it's way different. It's like none of that matters. It's a whole different world, society, life. I mean, let's just say like a Mark Reiter does get out. How do you continue your regular life? I mean, you've been there so long. It's all you know.
No, well, no. With a guy like him, man, is like, I could see him, like, honestly, the way, like when me and you first spoke on the phone, you asked me, are you sure you're from Baltimore? Like Baltimore, because the way I talk and stuff like that, right? And I do only got an 8th grade education, but like, he's the type of person like that. He's kind of like me in this type of way, as though he's going to keep up with certain things. Like, honestly, when I was younger, when I was 19, I was on a run. I had to go to Florida. I was living in like Boca Raton, Deerfield Beach for a few years. and I was dating a girl that went to Florida Atlantic University. So I would go when she would go to school. I would go into the school too, and I'd sit in on different classes and stuff because it's just big rooms and stuff. So I would sit in there and basically get an education and get around different type of people and learn different type of things. So he's a hustler. He would be okay. He wouldn't get in no trouble. He would make money. He would make money.
That's a sad thing. I mean, look at how much he's wasted inside. He could have been put to work and did something good, maybe in the end. But I'll tell you, the drug stuff, don't fuck around with that. But Eric, thank you for coming on. I really appreciate it.
All right. All right. Speak to you later.
Yeah.
All right. Good.
And thanks everybody for watching. We'll see you next week here on the Sit Down. Eric, wait up after the call. We'll chat after. Thanks.